Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be joining you here virtually. As was pointed out in the introduction, I'm here to talk to you about how Allstate coped with COVID and how we reacted, how we served our customers through what are some of the most unprecedented times of our lives. My role in Allstate is that I lead the Enterprise Shared Services division out of our Belfast offices, and Allstate's core billing engine for the main auto line of business is actually one of the key teams that are in my portfolio. That's actually a mainframe team, which does not conjure up images of agility to most people that are in the industry. But I think what you'll find is that we were able to actually push one of the most agile initiatives that I've ever been part of in my career through, and it was based primarily off of that system. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell a story really and hopefully share some perspectives about how we were agile with a very clear purpose through this COVID scenario that we all find ourselves in. It all starts back in early March when things were starting to escalate. We were starting to get a sense that this was going to turn into something that was going to be big. And I remember writing an email at that point to most of my key stakeholders with various suggestions as to how we might be able to help. How could billing help our customers? And we've got lots of capabilities that allow customers to manage their lives and to manage their finances. One of those was the ability to take payment holidays. Normally, those would be reasonably difficult to get on. You would normally have to go through your agent. Do you remember agents or insurance brokers that we used to have all over Belfast and Northern Ireland? Well, Allstate, we still have a huge amount of our business driven through those offices, those type of offices. And you would normally have to go through your agent or you'd have to phone a contact center. We came up with a new method in the latter part of March where we were able to allow our customers to self-enroll onto those payment plans and to take those payment holidays. And we actually did that by using some existing services. We used some bots, some RPA techniques to make it possible to do that. We stood up new, mobile apps and web front ends to allow our customers to do that. And really, we thought that was going to be job done. We thought, right, that's as much as we're going to play in this. But at that stage, I don't think any of us really realized how big this was going to be, how much this was truly going to escalate. And it was really around the end of March, that we were ourselves in our lockdown here in the UK. In the US, they called the lockdown shelter-in-place orders, and they were opening up in many, many states. And of course, they had a huge impact on the levels of driving over the course of that period in the latter part of March. And you can see there that the figures really speak for themselves, a massive, massive drop in driving. That is actually, in many respects, something that insurance companies love, because the less driving there is, the less people are out in the roads, the less people that bump into each other. We have way less accidents, and that means way less claims. So it actually means that companies like Allstate actually, perversely, we're doing quite well out of this in some ways. So really, Allstate is a company that is very much value-based. We want to look out for our customers. We want to look after our customers. And given the circumstances that many of them are finding themselves in, the huge impact that this has had on many sectors of the economy, Allstate felt that the right thing to do was to give some of that money back to our customers. And I got a text, it was the last Sunday in March, just as I was finishing my dinner, I got a text message that said we were going to give money back. And at that stage, nobody really knew what exactly that meant. I remember that night we spent a lot of time on the phone talking through how we might be able to do it. And I suppose really that was good because it meant we all slept on it and we were able to tackle it first thing on the Monday morning. And over the coming days, we kind of knew roughly what we were going to have to do. You can see there in the background of that slide, you can see Tom Wilson. That's our chairman and chief executive officer at Allstate. And we knew that Tom was going to be on national media by the end of that week. He was going to tell our customers exactly what we were going to do. So we needed to get our act together. We knew we needed to pull together a core team. We knew we were going to need to have a way to determine how much we were going to give to each policyholder. We knew we were going to have to communicate that to them. We knew we were going to have to email them. We knew we were going to have to provide the ability to log into their online accounts to be able to see what the impact was going to be for them. And we knew we were going to have to work out how to distribute, how to execute the payments, and obviously make the payments happen at the end of it all. So we were able to pretty quickly pull a core team together that were able to deliver, the capabilities across what I've just described. And we were able to bring that team together. We were able to work with an executive team to then determine what the program would actually look like, which allowed Tom really to have a very clear idea as to what he was going to say whenever he went on TV. We knew he was going to say that we were going to do this no less than 3 weeks. So that was the first part of the challenge. We knew that it was going to be a big amount of money. We knew that there was about $600 million in the pot that we were going to have to get to our customers. And we knew that we only had one chance to make it work. So this is the first lesson of our agile journey in COVID. If your CEO goes on the national media and there's a national media campaign, that makes you pretty agile. And the other thing to bear in mind here is the scale. I've already said $600 million. We had 9.5 million customers across 50 states. And, that in itself, the money, the volume, that was quite a challenge. So with the background to that, we knew that we had to pull a team together to make it happen. We were able to get that core group together. We knew who would work out how much we were going to pay to each customer. We were able to get the customers onto a web app that would allow them to see how much they were going to get, and we knew how we were going to get it to them. And we knew that we were going to have to find a way to make all that happen. And that was our first problem, really. Our existing infrastructure is actually really, really good. We're in a highly regulated industry. That means that we have to make sure that everything is absolutely by the book. And that means we've got a lot of sophistication in our rules. So while we are quite capable of being able to refund our customers when they are owed money back for some reason, being able to put everything through that process was actually going to be a very, very difficult thing to do. Going through all of the sophisticated logic that we have to produce the right marketing campaigns was also going to lead to those sorts of problems. And putting the full book of business through under those circumstances was going to be a huge challenge. So that's the problem. But where was the opportunity in all of this? As you saw on the last slide, really the scope of this was quite straightforward. We had to get money to people. We had to get it to all of them. We had to get it to them accurately. We had to make sure we told them how we were going to get it to them and when they were going to get it. So there was the opportunity. And the solution became pretty obvious pretty quickly. We had to bypass all of that complexity. It was really like building a ring road around a large city. So that instead of going through the city centre, you were, cruising at 70 as you went around the outskirts. That also though gave us a big challenge, because what we had to effectively do was build a completely new ecosystem that would allow us to be able to do all of what I've said on that new ring road, and we had to do that in about 2 weeks. Although what we had going for us was we didn't have to do all of it at the same time. So all of the stuff where we were communicating to customers, where we were working out what we were going to give to each customer, we were able to do that pretty quickly. That was able to be done in the first week, whilst the billing team, which was really the core team that I have responsibility for here between Belfast and Derry, while that team was able to work on building that new ring road to direct all the payments to where they needed to go. We needed to make sure that we hit that timeline, not only because Tom had already said that we were going to be paying people by the end of April, but also because we were going to be doing this over at least a 2-month period. So what we had to make sure didn't happen was that the first month's payment would sort of back end into the second month's payment. So how did we actually do that? Well, as I've probably already indicated, we had a pretty good high-level framework in place. We set that framework up in such a way that each team, each key component was able to operate pretty independently. And we were able to do that because we knew what the interfaces were. We defined the interfaces very, very crisply from the outset. And that meant that we were in a place where we knew we could allow each team to operate reasonably independently while bringing the whole thing together in a very efficient and effective way. So, motivating the team, how did we do that? Well, this was going to be a huge ask. And the fact that we were in a situation where we were all locked down, we basically couldn't really leave our homes. Well, that did make it a bit easier because it meant we didn't have to worry about people that were flying off on holidays or anything like that, sadly. And really, we were still at the same time asking people to put their lives on hold for several weeks. And for some people, in many respects, their lives are still somewhat on hold as we operationalize all of this. So that required an awful lot of goodwill on our people. But it also helped, I think, that because of all of the headlines, because of the fact that the work that we were coming in to our office, or our home offices, and all over Northern Ireland, because we had the benefit of seeing those headlines on the media, some of which had actually made its way over to this side of the Atlantic, we were able to see really, really clearly the impact of what we were doing, the importance of what we were doing, and we were able to see all of the social media chatter where people were talking about how great it was that the company was actually taking this sort of action. So it meant that our team uniquely, I think, had the best insight ever that I have seen into the impact of the work that they were doing to the end customer. And that in itself was absolutely critical to the success of this. So I'll focus a little bit on how the billing team itself actually managed to make this work. Remember, they're one team as part of that global network of about 5 core teams that together pulled together to make all of this happen. We basically had 2 really talented tech leads that designed the concept that essentially made sure we were able to track everything, that we were able to make sure that every single payment, we knew exactly where it was, at what point, whether it had gone through successfully, whether it had failed, whether we had to retry it again. And we were able to make sure that it was robust enough that we could do that as often as we needed to, because we didn't know, we don't know yet exactly how all of this is going to pan out. We may have to come back to this later in the year, for example. So we organized the team into 2 groups. Everybody had a very clear set of responsibilities and all of that. We were able to work very closely with all of our partners to ensure we were able to leverage all of our test environments, that we were able to string everything together, and that we were able to iteratively pull it all together and see how it would actually work in practice. And that brought us to around the 22nd of April, where we put everything through in a test zone, and we were then in the point where we could actually do some small production runs. And those small production runs were critical because that was the first sense that we would get as to how this would actually happen in practice. Because remember, this is a completely new ecosystem, and we didn't want to start with 9.5 million customers on day one. That really would have been crazy. So we were able to put those small runs through. That fleshed out some issues for us. We were able to tweak some of the ways in which we validated, the accuracy of the data that we were putting through, that we were able to preempt some of the customer concerns that we might see coming through, which meant we were able to, adequately prepare for that with the contact centers, with our accounting teams and everything else. And really it allowed us to then, develop the choreography that would be required when we started to do this at scale, which meant, getting the files that had all the payments in them loaded on time, getting the emails out to the customers on time, and making sure that the payments would sync with that. And by the end of the first week, after we'd figured all of that out, we had about 66% of the first run through, which was a fantastic result when you consider that we pulled all of the infrastructure together to do that in about a 3-week period. What we discovered during that was that we were getting more electronic payments failing than we'd anticipated. That required a lot of reprocessing. So we were able to take that experience, we were able to build that into the process for the next month. We were able to, understand which customers were impacted that way, and we were able to immediately route those to a check for subsequent, rollouts of payments in the April and then May timeframe. So that meant that we were able to, refine the process, make it a better customer experience as we went along. So that's really, in terms of how we executed it and how we iterated and not how we refined it. Really, what is probably more important than anything coming out of this, though, is what is the legacy that it actually resulted in. At this point in time, we have managed to, over the course of April, May, and June, we've actually managed to, deliver about $792 million back to our customers. That's a huge amount of money. It's a huge scale. And that's really the full book of business. That's us touching every single customer that Allstate has, which is something that in that space of time is quite a challenge. And that really did require quite a bit of creativity to make it happen. And I think it has left a pretty important legacy for us. It has really brought things home. It has made things real in a way that I don't think we've seen much in most of the sort of standard projects that we would have. And I think that allows us to learn some valuable lessons from it. And it allows us to adjust our thinking in a way that allows us to be more successful for future initiatives. So I think there are a few key points I'd like to maybe just leave everybody with in that regard. The first thing, as I already said, understand your interfaces. If you've got a big company like this, you're trying to do something at scale, you need to understand how you're going to interact with everybody. If you understand your key partners, you're on a very good trajectory already. The second piece is scope, and scope, yet stop there. The last thing you want is scope creep in a situation like this. You don't want any extras. This became a true MVP. It's the only, I think, initiative I've ever worked on where it really was an MVP. We put out the basics that we needed to make this happen, and that allowed us to do it in time. It allowed us to make sure that we were accurate, and it allowed us to make sure that we were ultimately successful and that we delivered a good customer experience. We also had to challenge the status quo. All of that complexity that we talked about, or sophistication, that was 25, 30 years worth of experience almost that could have worked against us, because if we hadn't been able to pull ourselves past that and see beyond that, we would probably still be talking about how we would actually execute this. So challenging the status quo is utterly important. Also understanding the impact. As I said, the scale was huge, and it was a team of about 20, 30 people globally that made all of this happen. And that in itself, I think, is quite humbling, because you can see the impact that your team has in a very, very direct way to so many people. Something that in technology we don't always get to see quite as vividly as we do here. Also, having very clear scope and direct and executive sponsorship is utterly important as well. We had it right up to the top of the company. It's always important to make sure that whatever you're working on, that people believe in it, and that it is something that is truly delivering and underpinning and critical to underpinning the success of your organization. And really, all of those points really bring it together, in that if we can understand and agree on a common purpose across a wide and disparate group of people, that in itself makes Agile come alive. That allowed us to deliver a major initiative in less than a month with the accuracy and the customer experience that was required to make it successful. And really, in closing, the only thing that I have left to do is just to once again thank the fantastic team of people across the globe in Allstate, with a big footprint, it has to be said, here in Northern Ireland, that made it all happen. And there they are. I will not even attempt to try and shout out their names here, because I will never remember to say all of them. But once again, we couldn't have done it without you. And as you can see there, you can see all sorts of emotions in there in the mix. I particularly like the one in the middle of Tom, where he's both happy and utterly tearing his hair out all at the same time. And I think that sums it up for me. This was both one of the most challenging, one of the most nerve-wracking experiences that I've ever had, but I wouldn't do it any other way. I would totally do this again, and I think all of the people you see on the screen there would say the same. Thank you all very much.